Hello, everybody, and welcome to Charity Radio. Hope you're all keeping well. We've been on a bit of a hiatus over the last 7 or 8 months, so apologies about that. Obviously, with the COVID situation, it's quite tough to get a guest into the studio. So basically, we've been creative and we've been using Zoom a lot with work. So I kind of thought, you know what, I'm going to get the thing going again. We're going to do a Zoom call. So delighted to have our first vodcast, if that's what you want to call it, a video podcast. I think everybody calls it a vodcast now. Our first vodcast guest is Steve Morgan. So just to give you a quick background on Steve, he is the husband of Sheena, who I work with. I met Steve probably over a year ago now at this stage. Steve was born in the UK about 20 years ago, Steve, was it?
21.
21. I knew I got that wrong. He was always creative, had always a flair for the arts, and did a 4-year degree in art school. He then made the kind of transition into advertising, worked in advertising for 30 years, and is currently doing children's books. He's an author of a number of children's books. Moved to South Africa, where he met his wife, raised a family, and lived over there for many years. And in 2013, the Emerald Isle drew Sheena, Steve, and their family here. So they've been here for 7 years and really, really enjoying their time here in Ireland. Okay, so without further ado, welcome, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me on the show.
Right,
pleasure to be here.
Great. And I think it was kind of a long time in the making. We had kind of penciled months ago to do the radio, but it didn't happen with the COVID situation. So I suppose first and foremost, you're keeping well and you're safe. Everything going okay for you?
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, it's been an interesting year, but yeah, we're doing all the protocols and keeping safe and just carrying on writing. It hasn't really affected that in any way. So as I said, you've got to be creative with the technology, and we're still keeping in touch with everybody through social media platforms. So yeah, it's been cool. No complaints.
Right. Yeah, it has been brilliant from that point of view. Actually, Zoom, it's been, been an invaluable tool for people to keep in contact, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. Yeah.
Okay, so just to give you a bit of context for the listeners, Steve, do you want to just kind of give us an overview or a background on yourself?
Yeah, I can do, Dave. Basically, I grew up in the UK in Gloucestershire, in a place called the Forest of Dean. So when I fly from Dublin into Bristol, I've basically got about 50, 60 minutes travel. It was a really great place to grow up as a youngster, as a kid. It's a very old medieval forest, so lots of massive oak trees and beech trees, lots of wildlife. So yeah, my childhood was really good. And obviously it was before Zoom was invented and Xbox and all the rest of it. So yeah, it was a really great place to grow up. And I think as kids, I always liked to read. I always did lots of artwork and all that sort of stuff. And I suppose really I really enjoyed using my imagination as a kid. And so it was a really unfettered childhood. We played lots of games out in the woods, built cabins, hide and seek, and all those basic things. So it was really good, It
was enjoyable. And you were telling me actually, Steve, when we spoke, the Forest of Dean, well known for Harry Potter.
Yeah. Basically, J.K. Rowling grew up in Chepstow, so that's about 13 miles away from where my folks stayed there. And again, lots of medieval castles. You can see a lot of the reference points, etc. And I think about 2 or 3 years ago, I read at a school in Mitcheldean in Gloucestershire, and they always take a photograph. They've had a few authors in, and they put them up on the walls. So I think I'm about 3 portraits from where she is.
Good man, Steve.
Yeah, so excellent.
And then always drawn to the arts, you were saying anyway, always had that creative flair, yeah?
Yeah. I like back in the day, obviously there were no Macs and stuff. So it was being able to draw, and, I always enjoyed a bit of painting, but probably more drawing as such. And then to help me get through, so at school, yeah, lots of that sort of things. And I had a really good art tutor who was a wildlife artist. He was quite renowned. Harry Pepper, his name was, not Harry Potter. And he did a few visits to Antarctica to draw the wildlife there. And he was very encouraging as a mentor. So yeah, I enjoyed doing that. Always did well at art. Always loved English as well. And also like thinking about stuff, So I think really that was a progression then into art school. So I did a foundation course at Cheltenham near the race course. Used to see the Queen Mother coming by sometimes for the races. And then did my degree course in Newport in Wales, which was a really great experience. It's just nice that was a period of being open-minded, doing lots of different things. But I tended to swing more away from the fine arts and the painting side of it into more of the graphic discipline. So always liked, you know, that it was probably, I would say, slightly a tighter discipline. And then when I completed that, it was quite difficult in the 80s. There weren't that many jobs going, but I was fortunate to get a job in an advertising agency in Basingstoke. Was there for 3 years working on various sort of campaigns and accounts. And yeah, that really led me to going abroad to South Africa, to Johannesburg, in actual fact. My sister had been there a few years and I went out to see her, and within no time at all was offered a job. And then also met my very good supportive wife, who supported me through everything I've done, which has been brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, so it was about mid-80s you went to South Africa, Steve, obviously, yeah?
It was indeed, yeah. And
sorry, was the intent message, was it literally just to go for a holiday, go for a couple of weeks, see what it's like? Or did you say you're going to go out there for a period of time, get a job and take it from there?
Yeah, well, I suppose at that time, it was still quite a volatile place. And I remember it was basically, my mom said, you haven't seen your sister for 3 years, so go and see her. So
pick up the backside and get on the plane kind of thing, is it?
It was a bit of a diversion. I was actually off to Portugal. So we went to South Africa. I had no idea, you know, how far it was or too much about it. So I got there and it was really amazing. Obviously it was nice and warm. That was the start to it.
The creative mind, Steve, that you intend to go into Portugal, but you said, "Here, I'll buy you. Go via South Africa." And
that's right, absolutely, yeah. But so that was, you know, I've always been open-minded and I like going with the flow. So sort of, as I said, yeah, pop and see my sister. So went out there and it was I just thought it was an amazing lifestyle. It was really hot. It was great to get into shorts and flip-flops. And one of my fondest memories, I was offered a job by an American company, which are franchised worldwide. It was a company called J. Walter Thompson. And I always remember my first day, I thought, geez, the weather's too nice to go to work. So I nearly didn't. I thought it was a nice day to go and spend in the park.
That could have been a bit of a calamity on your first day.
It could have been, yeah. But yeah, so really, like that really got me into major corporates, and there are quite a few of those in South Africa. But J. Walter Thompson, yeah, I worked on Kellogg's and Appletiser and lots of different brands. And really, as I would have started as what would have been called a junior art director. But again, so that was handling the sort of graphics and the art side of the business. But I always like to write and I really like to conceptualize. And I think they recognized quite early on that I could think. So I came up with lots of ideas that got put forward to client, and that was really interesting. And then, you know, it's working with photographers and calligraphers, you know, print houses, production companies. So lots of like-minded sort of creatives, which was fantastic. You know, you need to be in that situation. Yeah.
Obviously, the 4 years in art school probably did you a huge amount of good in terms of bringing those skill sets then into a work environment in the advertising. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it did. I think, you know, our art school has been good. It's produced lots of great musicians like Sting and Brian Ferry. So it gives you the freedom. I
saw Sting in Croke Park about 12
Yeah, it's just a really good, like, quite loose environment. And I suppose, you know, people say, well, they want to find themselves and all the rest of it. But like I said, I really like to just conceptualize and really think. So it was good to give me that space for 4 years to, you know, develop along those lines. So that was great, yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious about South Africa. Okay, so you went in the mid 80s. About
Yeah,
1994, I think, were the first free elections. So just kind of
yeah.
sum up when you got there. What was the political situation like? What was it like to live there as a, say, a white
Okay.
outsider, if you like?
Yeah, well, I think that also contributes to sort of the creative process. They say it's great to live in interesting times, and like I would have said, I probably came from quite a sheltered background in the UK. It was great and it was very different, but getting there, it was just such a mix of ideas and people, and I remember not well. I'd been there a day or two, and it was just very vibrant. It was a really really vibrant place. As I said, I hadn't experienced those sort of cultural norms or whatever, um, and yeah, so it was just really good being exposed and opening up to all that. I kicked around Joburg, got down to Durban, got down to Cape Town, and spent some time down in the Cape Flats. So it is a massive country. It's incredibly diverse, and I don't know. I found people are people. People like to talk. People like to story tell. So I would say, yeah, the best way to describe it was a really vibrant place.
But in
Um,
terms of divisions, Steve, obviously there would have been still very stark divisions in the mid 80s, you know.
yeah,
How did you, kind of the whole kind of post-apartheid thing? How was that? What way was that for you?
yeah. Well, I suppose as you say, like to be exposed to it, particularly there were sort of curfews still going on there and all the rest of it. So it was something I hadn't been exposed to in the UK. But like I said, I hadn't been there that long. It was probably about a year when it all opened back up.
Yeah.
So people were allowed into areas and all the rest of it. As I said, my particular experiences was with people, whether it was in Durban when I went down there, or I stayed in one of the townships when I went to Cape Town in a place called Grassy Park. People were dealing with it. That's the way it was at the time. But people I just found were just absolutely amazing. They were open about it. It's good to be open minded and hear other people's point of views. And again, I suppose it would have been sort of 86, like even in the advertising world, which was probably quite white and quite elitist at the time, there were far more people of color being allowed into that environment, which was great. So I met
It
lots
would
of
go,
interesting people.
yeah, we'll go with the industry being a bit more kind of, yeah, being a bit more open-minded, as you say, and probably a bit more inclusive
Yeah,
than other industries.
yeah, I would say that. Yeah, advertising's always looking for new angles and new talent, and again, it should really reflect the society that it serves, and it really started doing that, and it was just enjoyable for me. Never met a Zulu person before. I'd never met a Xhosa person before. I'd never met a Swaziland person before, but they all brought something to the mix and into the pot through creative ways. There was actually a guy I worked with. I remember, wow, his name was Grant Shakani, and he was an outside DJ and radio producer. And we brought him in house as our radio producer. Very, very, very sort of outgoing, exuberant sort of person. So, like I said, these things, every country's got its history, but I think it's getting past that. It is being inclusive to everybody. It is integrating everybody, and it is allowing people to have a voice. That's what I found, and it was great to be part of like a real eclectic mix. That's what was going on at the time. So it was really good.
Interesting, yeah. Another thing as well fascinating about South Africa is obviously the safaris, Kruger Park, etc. Did you get a chance to go on a jaunt or two over your time over there?
Yeah, no, I was really fortunate. On a sort of more personal aspect, yeah, we used to go to the game parks, and I think it's interesting. Like now, I've come to live in Ireland. When you go to a new country, whether you're going to be based there on a short-term work contract of a year or two or three, you you tend to manage your time, and you think you want to become a sort of tourist and enrich your knowledge and find out about stuff. So yeah, from a wildlife point of view, it's like no other place. It's just, I think the national parks cover about 2% of the land mass, of which the Kruger Park is like, I don't know, 0.2% of that 2%. And yet that park is bigger than Holland. So that gives you a chance of scale, you know. And it's just an opportunity to see wildlife in its own environment, to get next to an elephant, you know, next to buffalo, or see leopard or whatever. There's just something absolutely amazing about it. You know, I know zoos form a great part of conservation, but to see like wildlife interaction is just something else. And it's always been a lasting memory for me. The sunsets are fantastic, the wildlife's fantastic, and the people are fantastic. You know, as I said, there's a diversification of everybody, and a good diversity of cultures and things. So it was really good. There's 11 official languages there. So, you know, it's not like sort of English, Irish, Gaelic. You know, you got loads
of different indigenous languages. And did you pick up a couple of focal, as we say in Ireland? Did you pick up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, you know, so like I said, even language, you know, like I've always liked language as well. And like, you know, if you think Germans are probably a little more upright than Italian, you know, or whatever, but like their language is very fluent and very musical and very descriptive. And as I said, you know, I suppose where I was lucky, I picked up a little bit of Zulu, a little bit of Xhosa, probably a lot more Afrikaans. My wife Sheena is bilingual, and but like, you know, where I was fortunate is commercialism is conducted in English. So, you know, I could get by on that. They always said to me in advertising, avoid puns because they don't work in the other languages, you know. And when I was there, obviously with my West Country accent, at the Christmas party, I
very strongly, Steve. Fair play to you.
Yeah. When my first Christmas party, they were giving out prizes. I won best foreign language. Yeah.
Good stuff. Anyway, 2013, then you up sticks and you moved to Ireland. So what prompted a move to Ireland? Why Ireland, I suppose? Why not the UK if you were born and reared?
Yeah. Well, I suppose, you know, like we've been great believers in fate, and, you know, you end up where you're meant to be. And I think, you know, we'd had a fantastic time and a fantastic lifestyle in South Africa. But we just decided, really, we felt for our children there would be opportunity in Europe for them. So we were originally going to go back and stay in the UK, but for various reasons that didn't work out, more sort of administration, the sort of conflict than anything else. So we ended up coming to Ireland, and we had friends in a place called Dunboyne. So we went to stay with them. And then, as we said, we stayed with them for a little while, got used to the culture, you know, got into, you know, just seeing what Dublin was about, and popped up to Galway and all that. It is on the scale of things, it is a lot smaller, but we really like that. I think it's great. And just the people have been very hospitable. And also there's a massive culture of creativity here, and a massive culture of storytelling. You know, there's loads of artists, musicians. Pull into a pub, somebody will pull out a fiddle or some spoons, and I really love all that. That's what's great about it. And then I think another thing that really appealed to me, like, you know, we've managed to do quite a bit of the Wild Atlantic Way in the last 3 years. Is like, I don't know, I say to people, Ireland's like sat on the edge of the world. You know, you go up. We've just been up to Spanish Point recently. Like the waves are crashing in there, and the rock bridges of Ross bridges there. Like, it's absolutely wild. And you know, if you think next stop's America, and it just really, there's something medieval, and I don't know, it's just ancient about this place.
I it would appeal to your psyche, Steve, from knowing you.
Yeah.
Where have you done? Because the Wild Atlantic Way was something that was in the pipeline for a number of years. And really, I think it's about time they rolled out something, because if you think about it before, if you're a tourist and you're driving, if there isn't any pathways there, you're kind of stuck in your car and you're very limited in terms of the views. But having roadway or cycleways or pathways is ideal, because then you can fully appreciate and you can explore the countryside. So where have you guys done? I know you've done Donegal and Sligo.
Yeah. Well, what we were what I found we were doing is that we were doing little bits of it, and then
Yeah.
I said to Sheen, I said, you know, let's formalize it. Let's start at the beginning. So that was like, I think it's Kinsale was number one. So we went and stayed there for a few days and then worked our way up the coast. And we've gone all the way round now, like, you know, Sheepshead, Malin Head, all the way round right up to Spanish Point now. But then we've done little bits like Galway, Slieve League, which we'll link up. So I would say probably in the next 2 years we'll have it finished. But it's just an amazing journey, and a lot of people I've spoken to, again, they've done bits of it, but they haven't really done it in a linked up fashion. And again, you know, you go and stay in Airbnb or bed and breakfast or whatever, you get chatting to the locals, you know, they tell you points of interest and all that. You get into the pubs, there's people who, you know, where you're from, tell your story, bring out the fiddle, have a pint of Guinness. You know, I really just love all that informality and that hospitality. You know, it's really something special about Ireland and Irish people, you know.
It is, yeah. And I think the west of Ireland in particular is unbelievably relaxed. It was actually Sheen had recommended Slieve League to us in Donegal, because myself and my wife went over to Mayo and then on to Donegal and then via Sligo. So we did about an eight-day trek. But I suppose with the COVID situation, it gave people an opportunity to explore Ireland a bit more. Say Irish people.
Absolutely.
Slieve League is somewhere I never heard of until Sheena said it to me. And apparently it's 3 times the height of Cliffs of Moher. Like it's...
I think so, yeah. They're massive cliffs up there, yeah.
So,
and again, you know, it's just the wildness, you know, it's aptly named the Wild Atlantic Way. But, you know, you can see and appreciate the history and the heritage, that it must have been really tough to have lived there at one stage and eke out a living. But I think, yeah, you know, we were fortunate. I think about, I don't know, maybe 18 months ago, we bought a lovely picture from Patrick Donald in town there from his gallery. And I said to Sheen, you know, look at that, that's Achill Island. And I said, why don't we go there for a few days? So again, we're a bit like that, you know. So love the picture, bought it, said, let's go and have an adventure there. And we really like Achill. Whether we end up there eventually, I'm not sure, but that was, I've never seen so much water in all my life coming out of the ground and stuff. But, you know, when the weather's fantastic, it's God's country. And, you know, I just really like the wildness of it. I've spent a lot of my career and a lot of my lifetime in cities, and cities are great. But Ireland's not a big country to really drive around. You know, you can probably get from one end to the other in 7 hours. And that's because a lot of it is little country lanes. So, you know, you can get around. Yeah, that's right. So there's just amazing places to visit. And I just like that culture, like the old pubs. You know, I know they're having a tough time at the moment, but hopefully they'll stay open. They serve the community. And what I'm hoping to do down the line is, you know, it'll be nice to get into, like, you know, like in Dublin, there's a few pubs that have got storytellers that tell a bit of heritage and a bit of history. But, you know, to get in there and read a few books, you know.
Shanachie, I think they call it anyway, Steve.
Is that what it is?
Story. I think my Irish now isn't the best, but I think it's a Shanachie. Nice natural segue anyway onto the storybooks, right? So do you want to tell us about that? Obviously you had the creative flair for a long time, so was it probably a natural progression for you?
Yeah.
Did you start getting into writing children's books?
Yeah, I think what it was is, like I said, you know, like I was doing a lot of conceptualizing and a lot of television work and TV commercials for the big corporates, Nissan, Kellogg's, South African breweries, all the different ones. And when I sort of came to Ireland, I pretty much made up my mind to retire from that arena, but I wanted to keep my creativity going. And it was so funny. One of my first writers, who now works in Toronto in Canada, when he'd heard through Facebook that I'd written a book, and he said to me, when you were 26, he said, you always said you were going to write a kid's book. He said, now you've done it. So yeah, I just started off. We were living down in Island Bridge at the time, you know, and overlooking the Phoenix Park. And I just thought, yeah, right, I'll just come up with an idea. Just came up with this orangutan. And I don't know if that was because you could hear the lions and the gibbons and all at the zoo there, yeah. But so I just started writing it, and I decided to call him Stan. And it's basically written in verse. So everything rhymes, you know, it's all metered out and all the rest of it. But the basic story is that it was just an orangutan that had spent enough time in the zoo and wanted to get out and see the big wide world. So he gets lifted over the wall by a giraffe with a crane-like neck. So the giraffe reaches him out into the public, and then his whole story then is really that, you know, his journey, that he's going to find some clothes. So he basically goes to one of those clothes bins and lifts out some clothes, dresses himself like a guy, you know. Then he gets very hungry, sees a fruit and veg van, and he ends up in the back of this van snacking on all the stuff. And then,
unbeknownst to the poor owner, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Mr. Grant. Yeah, and then the long and the short of it is basically, you know, he cons his way into this woman's, which is Aunt Mabel, she's very own, into her B&B. He passes himself off as a long lost cousin, and then he becomes the handyman, and the guests all love him. He fixes the place up. Her husband passed away a few years ago, and so they sort of like get on like a house on fire. She says you can stay on forever, and she reveals in the garage there's a very old sports car. So the journey through the book ends up with Stan learning to drive, which is another book that I've just written. So we're going to be looking for a publisher for that. But so in the Stan series, we were going to probably end up with 3 or 4 books. The first book we sent to the BBC, CBeebies, and they really, really loved it.
Okay.
But it's about a 20-minute read. And they said, would I be able to cut it down? Which I can't. There's no way I can fit it into 5 minutes. But it was good to get good feedback from them. And then, as I said, you know, we had a toy made by a seamstress. So I've got a really lovely stuffed orangutan, graphic version of the front cover. And wherever we go in the world, like we were fortunate enough to go out to see my son in Australia last Christmas. Sold a few copies out there. So we've got people on Bondi Beach with the book. You know, we were fortunate before to go to Norway, take a few books, sold a few books there. So Stan's been with the Huskies and all that sort of stuff. And people like it.
I asked you, Steve, just briefly, just about Stan. Is it semi-autobiographical? I hear you mention cars. I know in your WhatsApp photo, I see a car. So I'm kind of thinking, are you drawing from your own personal
inspiration? Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Maybe he's hidden away in my psyche somewhere. I don't know. But we take Stan around, we take pictures of him all over the place.
You could, sorry, apologies for cutting over you.
Yeah,
you can reveal as much about yourself than anything else, right? Stan.
Yeah. So as I said, we had a toy made, and if we go and do readings, he comes along. It's a nice prop for the kids in the classroom. We've coined the word Stantastic, so they love all that. Then a while ago we had mugs and T-shirts and all that done. I've had pop stands done, so it's all props to support the book and support the social media platforms. But he's just been a great character. People love him, and I think what's been interesting for me is, I do believe there's a kid in all of us. We all love to read. It's a lovely experience, whether it's your daughter, your son, your nephew, your niece. To sit them down next to you. And the format of the book is very interactive. It's A4 landscape, so they can hold a page and they can turn the pages, and it's a really, I think it enhances that experience of reading.
And from what you were saying as well, it seems to be kind of a bit nuanced humor as well that adults would actually get and get some enjoyment from it as well as the kids.
Yeah, there is. I think that was definitely deliberate. We are big kids, but they relate to it as well. I'm not going to give too much away, but yeah, there's a few little things in the book, and generally the kids, they really love it. You'll get a good giggle out of the classroom. So yeah, that's done really well. But as I said, I'm surprised on both levels. People like it, and I think that's pleasurable as well. That if the adult likes reading it, the kid gets something from it. And I think what's been interesting is, as an experience, I've probably had about 4 people that have complained in such a nice way about the book. Most of them have said, look, we've had to hide this damn thing because the kid wants it read to them every night. And, they've said, oh no, we've given it to the neighbor's boy now, or whatever, because the kid wants it read all the time. And I think it is one of those little books as well. As I said, it's a 20-minute read. You can revisit it. You will find something new in it all the time. And it's not really, it was never designed to be like the cat sat on the mat. The cat is wearing a hat sat on the mat. You know, somebody said to me, how come you've put the word resplendent into it? But kids today, believe me, if they don't know what that word means, they're on Google. Within 2 minutes, they'll know what it means. And I want it to be a little bit more challenging. You know what I
More
mean?
educational as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So just on that, Steve, I'm just conscious of time and our 40-minute slot on Zoom. For the listeners out there that would want to get a book or a bit more information on it, what's the best way for them to find information on it?
Yeah, well, there's basically the one that I'd like them to go through the most, which we set up reasonably recently, is obviously it's called SB Storybooks, and that's on
for Paul SP Storybooks.
Yeah, it's SB Storybooks on Instagram. So if they go onto that, they can see the characters there. And basically, just to recap quickly, Dave, I don't know how we're doing on time. How are we doing?
I'd say we've about 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes.
Is it okay? Yeah. It's like I said, the stand book's done particularly well. And then I've got another one which calls Two Little Frogs from Gorstyn Owl, which is also another one written in verse, but also well worth a look. And I've been fortunate, just quickly, they've sold from Malawi to New Zealand to Canada, you know, to Italy. So basically, if people contact me through the Instagram, I can give them details. They can pay on PayPal, and they're really great gifts. They really are.
Brilliant. Okay. And I think, Steve, you said you had a bit of an offer. You had a couple of freebies that you're going to promote.
Yeah, I think, yeah, like I'm happy through the radio station if we can give away Two Little Frogs from Gorstyn Owl and 3 books of Hi, I'm Stan and I'm an Orangutan. So I think, yeah, maybe if the first 3 people phone you, well, it'll be the first 6 people. So it'll be 3 for the Stan book and 3 for Two Little Frogs. Brilliant. And we can get those out, yeah.
Appreciate the generosity, Steve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this up on Facebook, and then we'll put a little note afterwards. First 6 people to come back can get the books. So what I'll do is I'll outline it all in a post on Facebook anyway.
Okay, yeah, brilliant. That's great.
Great stuff, Steve. So look, I really appreciate your time. Have you guys?
Thank you, Dave.
You've a couple. You've Brayden back and Abby, obviously. So you'll have your Christmas dinner, I'm assuming, in your own place in Dublin.
Yeah, I should imagine so this year. Yeah.
Great. So they've been a nice family unit again.
Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah, yeah. And then we're out looking forward to a nice spring and continuing our Irish adventure.
So, and are you on cooking duties, Steve, for Christmas now? Or are you under pressure?
Yeah, I'm very limited to beans on toast or boiled eggs. I'm not. I'll stick to the writing.
She was telling us you're a chef. She must have been lying. She was telling us you've gourmet dishes every night.
She's embellished the storytelling.
Let's get that off you, Steve.
All right, that's great.
Pleasure anyway speaking with you, Steve.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, and good luck with everything in future. As I said, it should be a better year for all of us next year.
Great. Fingers crossed. All the best.
Okay, Dave. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Speak to you soon. Bye-bye. Bye.